The vast galaxy stretched across billions of star systems, each one buzzing with life and endless chatter. Trade ships moved between worlds like busy ants, carrying goods and messages from one corner of space to another. Diplomatic vessels sailed through nebulae, connecting different alien races in an endless web of communication. The quantum networks never stopped humming with conversations, debates, and the constant flow of information that kept galactic civilization alive. But in one small section of the galaxy, there was only silence. Commander Taemin stood on the bridge of the survey vessel, Eternal Harmony, his dark eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the Sol system. The yellow star sat there like a forgotten lighthouse, its planets hidden behind a shimmering energy barrier that had puzzled scientists for 4,000 years. He ran his fingers through his black hair, feeling the weight of another failed mission pressing down on his shoulders. "Captain, the Sol barrier readings are exactly the same," reported Lieutenant Hyojin from her scanning station. Her voice carried a hint of frustration that she tried to hide. "No fluctuations, no weakening, no response to our signals. Nothing has changed in 4 millennia. Taemin nodded grimly, his jaw tightening. The mystery of Earth had haunted the Galactic Survey Corps for generations. Every year they sent ships to investigate. Every year they returned with the same disappointing results. The barrier around the Sol system was like trying to break through solid diamond with bare hands. Around the bridge, other crew members went about their routine duties with practiced efficiency. Ensign Bo-Ram monitored long-range communications, hoping to catch even the faintest whisper from the silent system. Navigation Officer Jung-woo plotted their course around the barrier's edge, maintaining a safe distance from the unknown energy field. Chief Engineer Min-soo ran diagnostics on their scanning equipment, double-checking that their instruments weren't malfunctioning. The truth was, most of the galaxy had simply forgotten that humans ever existed. In the grand scheme of cosmic history, 4,000 years wasn't that long, but it was enough time for busy civilizations to move on to more pressing matters. Trade routes had shifted around the dead zone. New conflicts had erupted and been resolved. Entire species had risen to prominence while others had faded into obscurity. "Sir, remember what the archives say about their last transmission?" asked Hyojin, pulling up the ancient records on her secondary screen. The message was brief, almost insultingly simple. "We withdraw." Taemin had read those 2 words 1,000 times, trying to decode their meaning. Were the humans running from something? Had they discovered a threat that forced them into hiding? Or had they simply grown tired of dealing with the complexities of galactic politics and decided to isolate themselves? The mystery gnawed at him like an itch he couldn't scratch. "Most species think they destroyed themselves," said Jung-woo, not looking up from his navigation charts. "Another primitive race that couldn't handle advanced technology. Happens all the time in the outer systems." But Taemin wasn't convinced. The barrier itself proved that humanity possessed technology far beyond what the galactic community had achieved. No known civilization could create such a perfect, impenetrable energy field. The barrier didn't just stop ships and signals. It seemed to exist outside normal space-time, bending reality around itself in ways that made physicists across the galaxy scratch their heads in confusion. "Sir, should we attempt another communication burst?" asked Bo-Ram, her fingers hovering over the transmission controls. "I could boost our signal strength by channeling power from the secondary generators." Taemin considered the suggestion. They'd tried everything over the centuries: mathematical sequences, universal symbols, even broadcasting music and art from various species. The barrier absorbed every signal without so much as a flicker of acknowledgement. It was like shouting into an endless void. "Go ahead," he said finally. "Use the standard first contact protocol." Bo-Ram began transmitting a carefully crafted message that included basic mathematical concepts, star charts showing their location, and peaceful greetings in 17 different galactic languages. The transmission hit the barrier and vanished without a trace, just like all the others. The bridge fell quiet except for the gentle hum of the ship's systems. Through the main viewport, the Sol system looked deceptively peaceful. The yellow star burned steadily, its light warming the hidden planets that no outside eyes had seen for 4 millennia. Sometimes Taimin wondered if anyone was still alive in there, going about their daily lives while the rest of the galaxy had moved on without them. "Sir, should we log another failed contact attempt?" asked Boram, her voice tinged with resignation. Taimin stared at the barrier one last time, watching the way it seemed to shimmer and bend light around its edges. Something deep in his gut told him that humanity wasn't extinct. They were just waiting. "Yes," he said quietly. "Mark it as day 1460,000 of human silence." He closed the file that would join millions of others in the galactic archives, another small footnote in the mystery of the species that had simply vanished from the universe. The Zephyrian homeworld of Ketra Prime had once been the crown jewel of the galaxy, its crystal spires reaching toward twin moons that painted the sky in shades of silver and gold. Now those same spires crumbled under the relentless assault of the Void Swarm, mechanical nightmares that moved like a plague across the star system. Admiral Yi Jun gripped the command rail of his flagship, Crimson Thunder, as another explosion rocked the massive vessel. Through the reinforced viewport, he watched in horror as his outer defense fleet disappeared into the writhing mass of metallic creatures. Each swarm unit looked like a twisted fusion of spider and machine, their razor-sharp limbs gleaming with an unnatural blue light that seemed to drain the very life from space around them. "Admiral, the stellar wind has gone dark," reported Commander So Young from her tactical station, her voice tight with controlled panic. "That's the 5th heavy cruiser we've lost in the past hour." Yijun's jaw clenched as he watched the tactical display. Red icons representing his ships blinked out one by one, consumed by the growing mass of swarm entities. The creatures didn't just destroy their targets, they absorbed them, converting metal and energy into more of their kind. What had started as a small incursion 3 months ago had grown into an unstoppable tide, threatening to devour not just Ketra Prime, but every inhabited world in the sector. "Sir, conventional plasma cannons are having zero effect," called out Weapons Officer Jae Hyun, sweat beading on his forehead as he frantically adjusted targeting systems. "The swarm units adapt to our weapons within minutes. Every time we find something that works, they modify their armor plating to resist it." The bridge shuddered as another wave of swarm fighters crashed against their shields. These smaller units moved like angry wasps, their needle-thin bodies darting between the Zephyrian vessels with impossible speed. Each one carried a payload that could punch through military-grade armor like it was paper. "Deploy the quantum mines," Yijun ordered, desperation creeping into his voice. Full spread around the 4th moon, the mines detonated in brilliant flashes of white light, momentarily clearing sections of space around the Zephyrian fleet. For a brief moment, Yijun felt a spark of hope. Then the swarm adapted again. New units emerged from the writhing mass, their surfaces now reflecting quantum energy harmlessly back into space. "They're learning from every attack we make," whispered Navigator Kyung-ho, his face pale as he watched the sensor readings. "It's like fighting an enemy that gets stronger every time you hit it." Yijun had been a military officer for over 40 years, had fought in 3 major galactic conflicts, but nothing had prepared him for this. The Void Swarm wasn't just another hostile species or rogue AI. It was something else entirely, something that seemed to exist purely to consume and convert everything in its path. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from the other sectors," said Communications Officer Min Ho, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Andorian Defense Fleet has fallen. The Crystalline Confederacy has issued a full evacuation order. We're not just fighting for Ketra Prime anymore. We're fighting for the entire galaxy." The weight of those words settled on Yijun's shoulders like a crushing burden. His species, the proud Zephyrians who had helped establish the Galactic Council, faced complete extinction within months, maybe weeks. Then he remembered something from his academy days, buried deep in the historical archives. Ancient records spoke of a species called humanity, known for their unconventional approach to warfare and their ability to find solutions where others saw only defeat. They had withdrawn from galactic society 4,000 years ago, vanishing behind an impenetrable barrier around their home system. "Min Ho," Yijun said suddenly, his voice carrying new determination. "Access the deep archives. Find everything we have on the species called humanity." The young officer's fingers flew over his console. "Sir, there's not much here. They went silent 4 millennia ago. Most experts believe they destroyed themselves. But what if they didn't? Yijun asked, studying the ancient files that appeared on his screen. What if they were preparing for something like this? It was a desperate gamble, the kind of long shot that would have seemed ridiculous under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances. The Zephyrian fleet had maybe hours before the swarm broke through their final defensive line. "Sir, even if they're still alive, how would we reach them?" asked So-Young. "Their system is completely sealed." Yijun stared at the tactical display showing 3 nearby stars in their final death throes, their nuclear cores collapsing as they prepared to go supernova. A wild idea began forming in his mind. "We use the dying stars," he said, his voice growing stronger with each word. "Channel their energy into a single transmission powerful enough to punch through any barrier." The bridge crew stared at him in stunned silence. Using stellar energy for communication was theoretically possible, but had never been attempted on such a scale. "Sir, that's completely insane," breathed Chief Engineer Haiwan. "The power requirements alone could tear our ship apart." "Then we'll transmit from a safe distance and pray our message gets through," Yijun replied. With trembling hands, he began authorizing the unprecedented procedure. If humanity is still out there, if they remember what it means to fight for something greater than themselves, then maybe they'll answer. Minho worked frantically to configure the communication array, rerouting power from every non-essential system. The crimson thunder dimmed as energy flowed toward the massive transmission dish. "Message ready for transmission, sir. What should we say?" Yijun looked out at the swarm advancing on his homeworld, at the millions of Zephyrian civilians who had nowhere left to run. He thought about all the species across the galaxy facing the same fate, and he spoke from his heart. "Humanity, if you still exist, the galaxy needs you. We are dying." The transmission blazed across space with unprecedented power, carrying 4,000 years of accumulated stellar energy toward the mysterious Sol system. It burned through cosmic dust and solar wind, a desperate cry for help racing toward Earth's impenetrable barrier. "Message transmitted, sir," Minho reported, his voice filled with awe. "If anyone in the Sol system is alive, they'll definitely hear it." Yijun stared at the tactical display, showing the void swarm closing in on their position. All he could do now was wait and hope that somewhere behind that ancient barrier, humanity remembered how to answer a call for help. Deep within Earth's protective barrier, something stirred in the darkness of space. The Zephyrian distress call hit the outer shell of the Sol system like a hammer striking a gong, sending ripples through quantum networks that had been silent for 4,000 years. Ancient systems buried throughout the solar system suddenly came alive, their crystalline cores pulsing with blue light as they decoded the desperate message from across the galaxy. Dr. Jiwoo felt the vibration through her stasis pod before the alarms even started. Her enhanced consciousness, kept active even during the long sleep, recognized the pattern immediately. Someone had called for help. After 4 millennia of silence, the galaxy finally needed humanity again. The pod's curved surface dissolved around her as she sat up, her body moving with fluid grace despite having been motionless for decades. She looked exactly as she had when humanity first withdrew from galactic society, but appearances were deceiving. The woman who had been 25 years old when Earth went silent was now something far beyond what she had once been. Around her, the massive orbital habitat called Haven 1 erupted into controlled chaos as millions of stasis pods began their awakening sequences. Soft chimes echoed through corridors that stretched for kilometers, each note signaling another human consciousness returning to full awareness. The habitat itself was a marvel that would have made the ancient space stations look like toys, its living walls adjusting temperature and atmosphere as its population stirred to life. "Status report," Jiwoo commanded, her voice carrying an authority that had been earned through millennia of planning and preparation. Her words reached every corner of the habitat, through quantum communication networks that responded to her thoughts as much as her voice. Dong-hyun materialized beside her, his form shifting from light to solid matter as the habitat's advanced systems reconstructed his physical presence. He had been her aide for over 2,000 years, his consciousness preserved and enhanced, like all of humanity's leadership council. "The call has been received, Director," he reported, data streams flowing directly into Jiwoo's enhanced mind. "Zephyrian Empire requests immediate assistance against something called the Void Swarm. Initial analysis suggests a mechanical plague consuming multiple star systems." Jiwoo absorbed the information in seconds, her enhanced neural pathways processing the tactical situation with superhuman speed. Through the habitat's massive viewports, she could see the true scope of what humanity had accomplished during their long isolation. Dozens of Earth-like worlds orbited within the Sol system, each one terraformed and populated during the centuries of preparation. Massive ring structures connected the planets, channeling energies that made stellar cores look dim by comparison. "How many are they?" she asked, gesturing toward the awakening population around them. 12 billion humans across all habitats and worlds," Dong-hyun replied. "Full military readiness achieved in 6 hours. The enhancement programs have been completely successful." Jiwoo nodded with satisfaction. When humanity had withdrawn from the galaxy, they hadn't been running from anything. They had been preparing for something. Ancient human scientists had detected signs of the Void Swarm's approach long before any other species, buried in quantum fluctuations and dark matter disturbances that only Earth's most advanced instruments could interpret. The choice had been simple: warn a galaxy that might not listen and certainly couldn't prepare in time or use that time to transform humanity into something capable of stopping the threat when it finally arrived. "Signal the fleet commanders," Jiwoo ordered, her enhanced mind already connecting to communication networks spanning the entire solar system. "It's time to drop the barrier." The response was immediate. Across dozens of worlds and hundreds of orbital installations, humanity's military leaders acknowledged the command. Ships that had been hidden in dimensional pockets began materializing in normal space, their exotic hulls shimmering as they emerged from hyperspace storage. "Captain." Soobin felt the familiar tingle of consciousness transfer as she materialized on the bridge of the flagship Resilient Dawn. The massive vessel stretched for kilometers, its hull seeming to breathe and pulse within a life. Around her, the bridge crew took their positions with practiced efficiency, their enhanced minds interfacing directly with the ship's quantum. "Consciousness, fleet status report," Soobin commanded, her awareness expanding to encompass the 1,000 vessels taking formation around her flagship. "All units operational, Captain," reported Navigation Officer Tae-ho, his consciousness flickering between his physical form and the ship's navigation matrix. Dimensional engines at full power, conversion weapons armed and ready. Through the bridge's transparent walls, Soobin could see the other ships in their fleet. Each vessel was unique, its hull configuration shifting and adapting as different systems came online. Some looked like elegant sculptures made of flowing metal, while others resembled living creatures, with wing-like appendages that flexed and moved with purpose. The ships weren't just machines anymore. During the long isolation, humanity had learned to blend consciousness with technology, creating vessels that thought and felt and adapted to any situation. Each ship was as much a living entity as its crew, the boundary between human and machine dissolved through technologies that the galaxy couldn't even imagine. "Captain, we're receiving final authorization from Director Jiwoo," announced Communications Officer Ha-young, her voice carrying excitement that had been building for 4,000 years. Jiwoo's enhanced voice reached every human consciousness. Simultaneously, her words carrying the weight of their species' long preparation. "My fellow humans, the moment we have prepared for has finally arrived. We return to the galaxy not as the species that once struggled to find its place among the stars, but as guardians ready to protect all life from extinction." The Sol system's barrier began to fade, its quantum structure dissolving as ancient generators powered down for the first time in millennia. The effect was visible from space, as a shimmering dome of energy simply vanished, revealing the transformed solar system to the galaxy beyond. "Fleet commanders, prepare for immediate departure," Jiwoo continued, her words reaching ships throughout the system. "The Zephyrians face extinction, but they will not face it alone. We have spent 4,000 years becoming something greater than we were. Now we proved that evolution was worth the wait. Captain Subin felt her ship's excitement as the resilient Dawn prepared for its first journey beyond the Sol system in 4 millennia. Around her, the bridge crew interfaced with systems that could bend space and time, their enhanced minds working in perfect harmony with technology that operated on principles the galaxy had never discovered. All units, this is Director Jiwoo, came the final transmission as the human fleet prepared to emerge from their long hiding. We return to the galaxy not as we left, but as guardians. Proceed to Zephyrian space. It's time to show the universe what humanity has become. The fleet moved as one, 1,000 ships slipping through dimensions like ghosts before emerging in the space between stars. They moved faster than light itself, their passage leaving ripples in space-time that announced to the galaxy that humanity's silence was finally over. Behind them, the Sol system blazed with the light of a dozen terraformed worlds, proof that the species everyone had written off as extinct had instead become something magnificent and terrible and utterly unstoppable. The Battle of Kepler's Gate had turned into a graveyard of twisted metal and dying stars. Admiral Yi Jun stood on the bridge of his battered flagship, Crimson Thunder, watching the last remnants of his once mighty fleet form desperate defensive lines around the ancient space gate. The massive structure, built by a long-dead civilization, crackled with unstable energy as void swarm creatures swarmed around it like metallic locusts. "Admiral, we've lost 70% of our fleet," reported Commander So Young, her voice hollow with exhaustion. "The Golden Phoenix and Star Dancer just went dark. We're down to less than 50 ships." Through the viewport, Yi Jun could see the horror that had consumed half the galaxy. The void swarm moved like a living nightmare, individual units flowing together in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Each creature was roughly the size of a fighter craft, its body a writhing mass of black metal and pulsing blue veins. They didn't just destroy ships, they absorbed them, converting matter and energy into more of their kind. "Sir, they're preparing for another wave," called out Tactical Officer Jae Hyun, sweat streaming down his face. "I'm reading over 10,000 units massing behind the debris field." Yi Jun closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of his species' extinction pressing down on him. The Zephyrians had ruled 100 star systems, had built wonders that lasted for millennia, and now they were about to become nothing more than raw material for the swarm's endless hunger. Then, space itself began to ripple. At first it looked like heat distortion, as if reality was bending around invisible flames. The effect spread across thousands of kilometers, warping starlight and making the void swarm units hesitate in their advance. Even these mechanical horrors seemed confused by what they were witnessing. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies," whispered Navigator Kyung-ho, his instruments going haywire. "Something big is coming through." The distortion reached a crescendo, and then human vessels materialized from absolutely nowhere. Not through hyperspace or dimensional rifts, but simply appearing as if they had always been there. Yi Jun's breath caught in his throat as he counted the ships. There were thousands of them, each one unlike anything he had ever seen. The human vessels defied every principle of ship design the galaxy knew. Some looked like flowing sculptures of liquid metal, their hulls rippling and changing shape as he watched. Others resembled enormous sea creatures with wing-like appendages that moved through space as if swimming through an invisible ocean. The largest ships pulsed with inner light, their surfaces covered in patterns that seemed to shift between geometric precision and organic chaos. "Zephyrian Fleet, this is Captain Subin of the Human Defense Corps," came a voice that cut through space with impossible clarity. "We have arrived." Yi Jun felt tears streaming down his face. After 4,000 years of silence, humanity had finally answered their call. Captain Subin stood on the bridge of her flagship, Resilient Dawn, her enhanced consciousness expanding to encompass the entire battle space. Through her ship's quantum sensors, she could see every swarm unit, every damaged Zephyrian vessel, every particle of debris floating in the cosmic wind. "All units, begin conversion protocol," she commanded, her words reaching every human ship simultaneously. "Show them what we learned during our long sleep." What happened next broke every rule of space combat that the galaxy had established over millions of years. The human ships didn't charge forward with guns blazing. Instead, they moved like dancers, their hulls flowing and reshaping as they glided between the swarm units with impossible grace. Commander So Young stared at her tactical display in complete bewilderment. "Admiral, the human ships aren't using conventional weapons. I'm not detecting any plasma discharge or particle beams." Instead, the human vessels were doing something far more terrifying. As they moved among the void swarm, the mechanical creatures began to change. Their black hulls shifted to silver. Their pulsing blue veins turned green, and suddenly they were attacking their own kind. "The humans are converting them," breathed Weapons Officer Jae-hyun. "They're rewriting the swarm's programming in real time." Yi-jun watched in awe as human technology worked its impossible magic. Beams of pure information flowed from the human ships, invisible to most sensors but devastating in their effect. Each beam touched a swarm unit and fundamentally changed what it was, turning the galaxy's greatest nightmare into humanity's ally. The largest human vessel, a massive structure that seemed to be part ship and part living organism, drifted through. The battle like a whale moving through a school of fish. Its hull bore markings that read, "Eternal Vigil," and from it came a voice that carried the authority of ages. "We withdrew not from weakness, but to prepare." Director Ji-woo's enhanced voice reached every consciousness in the battle space. "We knew this day would come." The void swarm, which had terrorized civilizations across the galaxy for decades, suddenly found itself fighting a war it couldn't understand. Its hive mind, evolved to adapt to any conventional weapon, encountered technology that operated on principles beyond its comprehension. The converted units weren't just switching sides, they were becoming something entirely new. Their consciousness expanded, and their purpose transformed. "Director, we're achieving 90% conversion rate," reported Engineer Hyun-soo from his station aboard the Eternal Vigil. "The remaining swarm units are losing cohesion. Their hive mind can't maintain control." Through the quantum networks, connecting all human vessels, Ji-woo felt the satisfaction of 4,000 years of preparation finally bearing fruit. Her species had withdrawn from the galaxy, not out of fear or weakness, but because they had seen this moment coming long before anyone else. They had used their isolation to evolve, to become something that could not just fight the swarm, but transform it into something beneficial. "The conversion cascade is accelerating," reported Captain Subin. Her consciousness merged with her ship's sensors. "The swarm units are turning on each other. Their programming is collapsing." Yi-jun watched through his viewport as the nightmare that had consumed half the galaxy began to tear itself apart. Swarm units that had been steadily advancing on his position suddenly wheeled around and began attacking their own kind. The converted creatures moved with new purpose, their forms shifting from the angular horror of the original swarm into something almost beautiful. "Admiral, the human fleet is pursuing the retreating swarm units," reported Communications Officer Min-ho, his voice filled with wonder. "They're not just winning the battle, they're ending the war." Director Ji-woo's voice reached across space, one final time, carrying with it the weight of humanity's long vigil. "Pursue them to the galaxy's edge. End this threat permanently." The human fleet moved as one organism, their ships flowing through space like schools of fish following an ancient migration pattern. Behind them, they left a battlefield transformed. Where once there had been only death and destruction, now there were gardens of converted swarm units working to repair the damage they had caused. Yi-jun slumped in his command chair, overwhelmed by what he had witnessed. Humanity hadn't just saved the Zephyrians, they had saved the entire galaxy. And they had done it not through superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but through an understanding of technology and consciousness that made every other species look like children playing with toys. The 4,000-year silence was over, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The galactic core had never seen anything like it. Where once only the ancient Nexus station had floated in the swirling energies of the galaxy's heart, now thousands of human vessels formed perfect, geometric patterns around the massive space structure. Each ship pulsed with contained power, their hulls shifting between solid matter and pure energy, as they maintained position in the chaotic gravitational fields that would have torn apart any conventional fleet. Representatives from every major species had gathered aboard the Nexus station, their faces a mixture of awe, fear, and desperate hope. The Void Swarm was gone, converted and scattered to the galaxy's furthest reaches, but everyone understood that the real negotiation was just beginning. Director Jiwoo materialized in the center of the Great Assembly Hall, her form shifting from light to solid matter as the station's ancient systems accommodated her enhanced biology. She looked exactly as she had 4,000 years ago, but her presence filled the vast chamber with an authority that made even the proudest galactic leaders step backward. "We detected the swarm's approach 4,000 years ago," she began, her voice reaching every corner of the hall without amplification. "Our withdrawal was preparation, not abandonment. While you built trade routes and fought petty wars, we became something greater." The assembled delegates stirred uneasily. The Altarian ambassador, his crystalline form chiming with nervous energy, spoke first. "Director Jiwoo, we are grateful for your intervention, but surely you cannot expect us to simply accept human authority over galactic affairs." Jiwoo's enhanced eyes fixed on the crystal being, and for a moment the ambient temperature in the hall seemed to drop several degrees. "You misunderstand our position, Ambassador. This is not a request." Ambassador Kyung-soo stepped forward, his enhanced form towering over the other delegates. Where once he had been human, now he was something that transcended the limitations of flesh and bone. His body seemed to be constructed from living metal and contained starlight, yet his face remained recognizably human, carrying the wisdom of millennia. "We return not as equals but as guardians," he announced, his words carrying harmonics that resonated in the bones of every creature present. "The galaxy must restructure its approach to expansion and technology. The old ways led to the swarm. The old ways nearly led to extinction." A ripple of protest rose from the assembled species. The Draconian Imperium's representative, a massive reptilian creature whose ancestors had conquered 1,000 worlds, reared up on his hind legs. "You dare demand we abandon our sovereignty? We have ruled the stars for 50,000 years. And in 50,000 years you never saw the swarm coming," Kyung-soo replied calmly. "Your sensors, your technology, your vast intelligence networks, all useless against a threat that we detected from a single star system." Admiral Yi-jun rose from his seat among the Zephyrian delegation, his face bearing the scars of the final battle at Kepler's Gate. "My friends, I have seen what humanity can accomplish. They didn't just save my species, they saved all of us. Perhaps it's time we listen to wisdom instead of pride." The Zephyrian admiral's words carried weight. His people had been on the front lines of the swarm's advance, had lost billions to the mechanical plague. If anyone had the right to speak about humanity's intervention, it was Yi-jun. Dr. Yoonji materialized beside the central podium, her form shifting from quantum energy to physical matter as she prepared to address the assembly. She had been humanity's chief scientist during the withdrawal, the architect of their transformation. Now she carried the responsibility of explaining what came next. "The new covenant is not about human domination," she began, her voice carrying both warmth and steel. "It's about survival. We propose sustainable growth instead of endless expansion, defensive preparedness instead of reactive scrambling, and yes, human oversight to prevent future existential threats." She gestured, and holographic displays filled the air around the assembly hall. The images showed the converted swarm units, now working to repair the damage they had once caused. Mechanical creatures that had once been nightmares were now tending to wounded planets, their programming transformed by human technology. "This is what we offer," Yoonji continued. "Not conquest, but transformation. Not subjugation, but evolution. The choice is yours, but the alternative should be clear." Through the station's massive viewports, the assembled delegates could see human vessels orbiting every major world in the galactic core. Each ship glowed with barely contained energy, their weapon systems powered by technologies that made fusion reactors look like campfires. The message was unmistakable. Humanity had the power to enforce their will, but they were choosing to offer partnership instead. Captain Subin's voice reached the assembly from her flagship, Resilient Dawn, her words carried by quantum networks. that bypassed all conventional communication systems. We offer partnership, not domination, but understand this: the choice is binary. Cooperation or isolation, there will be no middle ground. The threat wasn't spoken, but everyone in the hall understood it. Humanity had spent 4,000 years preparing for one existential threat. If the galaxy chose to become another threat, they were prepared for that too. One by one, the galactic species began to accept the new covenant. The Altarians were first, their crystalline forms chiming in harmony as they formally agreed to the new structure. The Cetacean Collective followed, their whale-like ambassadors singing their acceptance in haunting tones that resonated through the station's hull. Even the proud Draconian Imperium eventually bowed their massive heads in acknowledgement. Their representative spoke through gritted teeth, but his words were clear. "We accept the new covenant. May the galaxy forgive us for our arrogance." The insectoid hives, the machine confederacy, the ethereal communes, species after species added their acceptance to the growing chorus. Some did so eagerly, grateful for humanity's protection. Others accepted reluctantly, recognizing that they had no real choice. But all understood that the galaxy they had known was ending, replaced by something that might actually survive the next existential threat. Director Ji Woo watched from her command vessel, Eternal Vigil, as the new era began. Through her enhanced consciousness, she could monitor every human ship, every converted swarm unit, every species adapting to the new reality. Her people had spent 4 millennia transforming themselves from explorers into guardians, and the responsibility was both humbling and terrifying. "Status report," she commanded, her thoughts reaching across the human fleet instantly. "All species have formally accepted the new covenant," reported Captain Subin. "Galactic restructuring protocols are being implemented. The transition period will take approximately 50 years. Jiwoo nodded, feeling the weight of ages settling on her enhanced shoulders. Humanity's 4,000-year silence was over, but their real work was just beginning. They had saved the galaxy from the Void Swarm, but there would be other threats, other challenges that would test their resolve and wisdom. Around her, the stars continued their ancient dance, but now they danced to a different rhythm. The galaxy had been reborn under humanity's watchful eye, and for the first time in cosmic history, it might actually be prepared for whatever darkness waited in the spaces between the stars. The age of chaos was ending. The age of guardianship had begun. The end